2 years ago yesterday, a young black man was shot by the West Virginia State Police SWAT team inside his home while he was sleeping in his bed. He was completely innocent, wasn't suspected of having committed any crime, and yet you haven't even heard about it, have you? You didn't see it on the national news. You didn't see anybody marching. You didn't see any civil rights leaders upset about this. You didn't see any politicians upset about this. You didn't see any press conferences from the governor or the West Virginia State Police or anybody about why this innocent young man was shot literally in his bed. And now 2 years later, no report has been released. Instead, they for 2 years have been trying to cover up the truth and to conceal the facts because they're worried about a civil lawsuit. This video is about my client, Darius Lester, who fortunately survived being shot, but who has been gaslit now for over 2 years, and who just yesterday has filed a federal civil rights lawsuit seeking to vindicate his constitutional rights and hold that guy accountable for what would be a crime anywhere else outside of a corrupt small county in West Virginia. Now, maybe I shouldn't say corrupt county. Maybe I should say notorious county. Where this occurred is McDowell County, West Virginia. If you search for that on YouTube, you'll find some fascinating videos of people just driving around McDowell County and showing how the economy there was completely devastated, how it was a once thriving boom county due to coal. But when the coal jobs left, it sort of left devastation in its wake. And in my almost 20 years of handling police misconduct allegations in West Virginia, that is probably the most notorious place that I've ever dealt with. It can be a really shady place. So this actually went down in a very tiny community there in that county called Big Sandy. Darius Lester is somebody who I would still refer to as a kid, but he's working full-time for a coal company driving a coal truck. From what I've heard, nobody has anything but good things to say about him. He had no criminal history. At this time, he wasn't suspected of having committed any crime. He just happened to be staying at his uncle's house. Unbeknownst to him, his uncle was being investigated for allegations regarding his computer. The cops wanted to seize his uncle's computer hard drive. This had nothing to do with Darius, except the location. The evening before, Darius was working the night shift driving the coal truck. He didn't get home from work until about 4 a.m. He gets home and he goes to sleep where he likes to sleep in his uncle's house. And this is on a couch that is sort of like a futon, and it's in a common area of that home. I visited the home after this occurred, and you have to understand the context of the layout of the house because it's important here. When you come in the front door of the house, you would walk through the main room, the largest room of the house, which is the living room. Then you come into the kitchen. And from the kitchen, you then have to make a 90-degree right-hand turn towards the bedrooms on that side of the house. On the other side of the kitchen is sort of a common area. It could be a family room, whatever. I'll call it the common area. This is where this futon/couch was that Darius liked to sleep on. Now that room was sort of under renovation, so there were tools lying around. So he gets home 4 a.m., he conks out, he goes to sleep on that bed, on that couch. By the time he would wake up, the West Virginia State Police's SWAT team would already be in the house aiming weapons at him, aiming flashlights at him inside the pitch dark house. So the West Virginia State Police's SWAT team, which they call the SRT, the Special Response Team, shows up at the front door of this house. I reviewed the warrant that was left at the residence. There was nothing in the warrant affidavit that was given to the judge that specifically made any allegations that somebody inside the house was believed to be armed or dangerous, and thus requiring a SWAT team to treat it in this manner. It was, by all accounts, a routine search warrant execution that pertained to wanting to get somebody's hard drive. There was nothing saying that there were firearms in the house or that anybody inside had a criminal history or was believed to be dangerous. They did not have a no-knock entry warrant. It was just a regular search warrant. So they show up with a SWAT team. I don't know how many guys, but a bunch, presumably in body armor, with rifles, perhaps machine guns, etc. One thing they don't have is body cams, because although the West Virginia State Police by this time has made every traffic officer wear a body cam, because traffic incidents are important, when they think it's important enough to send a SWAT team in, they think it's important enough to wear extra body armor and have extra special weapons and backup, they don't want that on camera. Because if something happens, the courts and the public and the media will just have to take their word for it. There won't be any proof one way or the other. And that's the situation we ended up in. So no body cams, SWAT team, they show up at approximately 5:30 in the morning. The same time of year as right now. I got up at 6 o'clock this morning and it was still pitch dark outside. So 5:30 in the morning, it's pitch black outside. Darius is asleep inside. His uncle is also asleep in the master bedroom. Pitch black inside the house. Of course, they know this. That's why they're there at 5:30 in the morning. No emergency lights on outside to alert anyone to a law enforcement presence. Before breaking in the door and storming in the house, they claim to have knocked and announced. They claim to have said, police, search warrant, or something like that. They claim to have said that likely because there's a constitutional requirement for them to do so. But the evidence indicates that they did not want the occupants of the home to know that they were there, which is why they didn't have any emergency lights on outside, why they showed up at 5:30 in the morning when they thought everyone would be asleep. But we know that nobody inside, neither of the occupants inside, heard their knock and announce. Everyone's still sleeping, even after they break in the door. Then this SWAT team streams inside to clear the house. The point officer is the one who would end up confronting Darius. He goes straight through the house, as I explained previously, where you have to go across the living room into the kitchen, then make a 90-degree right-hand turn to that common area where the couch was that Darius was sleeping on. At that point, Senior Trooper J.I. Jones shot Darius 2 times, once in his upper torso and once in his left arm. We know that this either occurred on or in the immediate vicinity of the couch on which Darius had been sleeping, is indicated by the bullet holes and blood all over as well as under that couch. And as he laid on the couch bleeding after being shot, Darius recalled hearing one of the officers say, "Did he have a gun?" And we believe that the SRT officers initially believed that Darius was actually his uncle. Maybe it wasn't that big of a deal to shoot the target of their investigation in their minds. When one of the SRT officers found the uncle on the other side of the house asleep in the master bedroom, the officers then likely realized that they had shot someone else, an unknown young black male who was entirely unrelated to their investigation. And it was at that point that we believe they cooked up a story, because they have to have a story about why he was shot 2 times. He was not armed with any sort of firearm or knife or anything like that. He was in his bed. We believe one of the officers located a hammer in that room because there were tools around, and that's when they fabricated false justification for having shot Darius, claiming that Darius intended to attack this SWAT team with a hammer. Now, mind you, he has no criminal history, no pending charges. In other words, he has no reason to attack a SWAT team, much less with a hammer. Now, you see the deer head on the wall. Nearby was actually a hunting rifle. So if he thought that his home was being burglarized and he wanted to defend the house, he could have grabbed a rifle had he been awake. Why would he grab a hammer? All of that is completely irrational. So after he shot, the officers tended to him on that very couch that Darius had been sleeping on just minutes earlier. They applied a tourniquet. They called for EMS. Darius asked what was going on, and they told him to shut up. The officers also told him to quit looking at them, and the cover-up began, attempting to justify the shooting. As Darius is in the hospital undergoing emergency medical treatment, the West Virginia State Police apparently directed another trooper, Senior Trooper K.M. Sadler, to file a criminal complaint. These are criminal charges against Darius, charging him with 1 felony count of attempt to commit malicious wounding. And this is important. The narrative alleged this. Upon arrival, SRT knocked and announced their presence twice before breaching the door to the target residence. Upon entry, SRT members encountered a male subject, later identified as Darius Lester. Lester had a hammer in his hand and rushed towards members of the SRT with the hammer up in a striking position. Despite being given verbal commands to drop the weapon, Lester continued towards the SRT members with a deadly weapon still in hand in a raised position. A SRT member reacting to the threat presented by Lester discharged his firearm twice to stop the threat, striking Lester. Now, for some reason, they had a police officer write that and swear to that who was not there when it happened, who was not the shooter. So when that actually went to court, the judge found that there was no probable cause for the charge, and it was dismissed on July 6th of 2023.
Today, a hearing was held to see if the court would officially charge him with this crime.
Here we have a very unique situation in that Trooper Sadler, who has been called here to testify on behalf of the state, has absolutely no knowledge whatsoever. He is basing everything that he knows about this based on a Trooper Yeager. And Trooper Yeager, as Trooper Sadler testified to, wasn't involved in what happened on that day. So about 22
Two witnesses were presented to bolster the state's case. Neither witness was on the premises, let alone inside the home at the time of the incident. After Magistrate Van Dyke heard from all parties, he announced that not enough evidence was presented to officially press charges against him.
So the only witness that the police, that the state brought, was this guy who wasn't there, who just wrote this up. So it appears that this other Trooper Sadler, was utilized basically to conceal the identity of the shooter, which then enabled the state police to deny FOIA requests that I was sending to get information. There's an open criminal case. That's an exception to FOIA. We can't give you any information, even though they clearly had no intention of even trying to prosecute or prove that criminal charge. Sounds like obstruction, doesn't it? They were obstructing the victim. So the criminal charge was then dismissed. But thereafter, the West Virginia State Police still denied my FOIA request. They claimed to still be investigating the shooting, even though no charges were pending anymore. And it had been over 5 months since the shooting. In West Virginia, there's a 1-year statute of limitations for criminal cases for misdemeanors. Just several days before that would bar them from charging Darius with a misdemeanor forever, on March 6, 2024, they filed yet another criminal complaint against him, this time charging him with misdemeanor assault. And these charges were brought by Sergeant Jerry Davis, who just happened to be the state trooper who was supposed to be investigating the shooting, who was communicating with the family, who was trying to visit and interview Darius when he was still in the hospital. He was supposed to be investigating and writing the report about the shooting, which still 2 years later, we don't have. He's the one who files more charges against Darius for allegedly attacking the SWAT team with a hammer. What was the effect of that? Well, they didn't have to give us the report. And guess what? That charge is still pending. They can't prove it. It's bogus, but they're leaving it out there. Why? We had 2 years to file a lawsuit about the shooting, a civil lawsuit. They kept that charge pending without it going to court for 2 years, without providing discovery, without even providing a copy of their report about what happened at the shooting. They never provided it to me. They never provided it to Darius or his criminal defense attorney. We believe they purposefully did that in an attempt to toll the 2-year statute of limitations to file a lawsuit, forcing the lawsuit to be filed without the benefit of being able to obtain and review the investigation report. But of course, we did file a lawsuit. So ultimately now, because we don't have any body cam footage, it's going to be up to a jury who can listen to both sides and resolve the factual dispute. Did Darius attempt to attack this heavily armed SWAT team with a hammer for no reason at all? That's why we have juries. That's why we have courthouses. And honestly, I can't wait to make that argument. Isn't it a little more likely that the SWAT team just didn't get all dressed up for nothing? And they did something that's actually very likely to happen when your government sends an armed SWAT team into your home. That's why it shouldn't happen unless it's absolutely necessary. All of these tragic stories occur when this happens at the wrong address or with the wrong person. Mistakes are always made by the government because government is almost always incompetent. They're going to make mistakes. Or maybe this wasn't a mistake at all. but something far more sinister. So I can't wait to get this before a jury. And if you want to follow along in this case, you can subscribe here and at the blog at thecivilrightslawyer.com, because now there's no way they can stop me from getting all of the discovery, the investigation report. Not that I'm holding my breath for it to be advantageous to us, but at least I can see what angle they're going for here. Remember, our rights don't end where your fear begins. Freedom is scary. Deal with it.